Well, good evening. I can't see you, but hopefully, maybe you can see me. Uh, Looking to see where you are, looking to hear where you're coming from, want to know where you're coming from. Thank you for joining us on this special episode of The Tim Allston Show. I am Tim Allston, and just glad to have you with us. Let me check and see where you are calling from. We're blessed already to have some 359 views. I hope all of you, I am planning all of you being richly blessed by what I have to share with you. I don't know why I am not seeing me at this time, but seeing me is the least of my concerns. Let's see. I don't know how to full screen. Okay, that didn't work, but that's okay. We'll just keep moving. Let's see. I see someone here from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And you say you're 243. Yeah, we're here at episode number 4. So you have been 2 for 3. Now you are now 3 for 4. Well, thank you for being with us. I see someone also here from Severn, Maryland. Severn, Maryland. Thank you. Glad that you're joining us close to the Chesapeake Bay. I also see someone close to home, someone here from Hazel Green, Alabama. Hazel Green, which is a neighboring community to where my wife and I live. Glad to have you here as well. And this is going to be exciting. As you know, I typically do these shows on Mondays, but I have been inspired, been encouraged to expand beyond just one day. So this is that trial run. I hope that you're praying with me and praying along with me as we do this. I think I've got some exciting information for you, but so we'll get to it in a few minutes. Let me see whom else I need to make contact with. Um, well, let's go on ahead and let's see. Let's go on ahead and let's get started. Well, hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Allston, and welcome to the Tim Allston Show on a special Tuesday night edition. From wherever you are, please know that you are welcome to be with us. Our aim here is to educate and to empower and to equip emerging leaders, those who are number one, typically from their number 2 positions, to energize you, educate you, empower you, and equip you with what? With not just thought leadership, but God thought leadership. God thought leadership. And as always, my aim on this show is to present current events and to present newsmakers in the light of best practices from the Bible. In so many words, how do we take what's in the news every day? How do we take news events? How do we take the people that make the news, the newsmakers? And is there some parallel? Is there some intersection? Is there some overlapping with best practices from the Bible? Is what they're doing outside here in the news so brand new that it has no parallel to examples and practices in the Bible? This live stream and podcast is going to answer those questions for you in a very real way. Now, today, again, is Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. And if I seem a bit anxious, if I seem a little bit antsy, and if I seem a little bit distracted, it's because my favorite basketball team is going to be on television in roughly a few minutes. In a few minutes, there's going to be a basketball game. And it's going to be, let me see if I can get this working right. Yes, it's going to be a basketball game between the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference and also the number 1 team in all of the NBA. And they will be hosting there in Cleveland. They will be hosting the defending and reigning NBA champions, the Boston Celtics. As we can look at their record, we can see that the Cleveland Cavaliers are leading the league. They have, I think, a total of 35. Let me see, what's their record? They've got 40 wins against only 9 losses. 40 wins, 9 losses. That's That's tremendous. That is really, really, really good. That's exceptional. While the Celtics, who are the defending champions, they have a record of 35 wins and 15 losses. Someone just said to me they don't have a picture. Why they don't have a picture, I don't know. I don't see a picture here either. So I'm curious to see where the picture is. Let me see. Is it a mirror cam? I don't know. I got to find something. Let's see. Let's try to see where is the image. I don't see an image. I don't know where the picture might be. It was there before. I don't know where it is. I guess I'll keep talking. I guess somebody will send me a note and let me know how I can pull up the picture. But in any event, I will just keep on talking. Well, let's see. Let's go back to the screen here. Okay. I said the Celtics have a record of 35 wins against 15 losses. Now, as I said, we are minutes away from the start of that contest between the top two teams in the Eastern Conference. And we are also at the start, basically at the start of our first full week in February, in which we celebrate nationally Black History. At this time, we will be celebrating Black History. Now, it's not a coincidence, not to me at least, but perhaps it may be coincidental to you, that the Boston Celtics and their winning tradition is intersecting with Black History Month, because of the fact that what is happening is the fact that there is that intersection of winning traditions. And that is the fact that you've got the winning tradition of NBA championship dynasties and Black History Month. Now, let me be very, very honest with you, very candid with you, as I try to figure out how to get this picture, a picture up on the screen. I don't know what's happening. I'm a little bit befuddled right now, but let's see. I'll just keep plugging away. Sooner or later, I will come to. I don't need names. Names off. Yes. Okay. Very good. I am live. Yes, I am live. I am. Well, let me keep talking. Sooner or later, I'll get to. Wait, could this be in it? Bingo. Okay, I think I've got a picture. Thank you. Someone without praying. Thank you very, very much. As I was saying, that we are a few minutes away from me seeing my favorite basketball team. What is happening tonight, there's going to be a contest, and the contest is between the Cleveland Cavaliers, who at this stage of the game are not only number one in the Eastern Conference, but they're also number one in the whole of the NBA. They've got a record of, let me look at their record, see if the record has changed. No, it hasn't. They've got 40 wins against 9 losses. 40 wins against 9 losses, while they're hosting there in Cleveland, the defending and reigning NBA champion, the Boston Celtics. And the Celtics are currently number 2 in the Eastern Conference, and I think number 3 or number 4 in the whole NBA. And they have a record of 35 wins and 15 losses. And what is exciting to me is that we are not only a few minutes from the start of that contest between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Celtics, but we're also at the start, nearly the start of that first week of February, which we as a nation pause and celebrate the history of Black people in this country. And to some, it may be coincidental, but not to me, because what we are dealing with is the Boston Celtics and their winning tradition is intersecting with 2 winning traditions. Number 1 winning tradition is that of NBA championship dynasties. Now, let me be very, very honest with you. Whenever I mention to somebody that I was born, reared, and educated in the greater Boston area, and especially when I mention it in the neighborhood barbershop, I began to immediately hear all of the taunts and jeers. Why? Because they want to say that Boston is such a racist town. And I listen to all those taunts and jeers when they talk about it. But now, let me also share something else with you. If I get my my PowerPoint to work correctly. Okay, let's try this. All right. Now, in 1926, Dr. Carter G. Woodson established Negro History Week. And Negro History Week, as you know, is the forerunner of what we now know as National Black History Month. He established it for two main reasons. Number one, to dispel the misconceptions and just the out and out falsehood and lies about, and also to give appropriate credit to the contributions of Negroes, African Americans, here in America. Additionally, what marries with that is what is said in the Bible. Dr. Woodson talked about setting facts correct information, dispelling rumors, and the like. The Bible makes a similar kind of statement that I want to focus in upon this evening. In his letter to the new Christians in the ancient city of Philippi, the Apostle Paul said, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. So I'm backed up by both the Bible and Dr. Carter G. Woodson. When I talk to my friends, my brothers in the barbershop, when they want to hate on me, they want to hate on Boston, and then they want to hate on the Boston Celtics, I tell you what I do. I ask them one simple question that they either cannot answer or they simply refuse to try to answer. And then I begin to follow that up with a recitation of the facts. And what is that question? I'm glad you asked. That question is simply this. When they want to talk about how Boston is such a racist town, I ask them, name me one city in the United States that is not racist. Name one city in the United States that is not racist. When I ask them that simple question, they can't answer that. Now, understand me, I'm not making any excuses for Boston against those allegations. But I come back again to that central and single question. Name one city in the United States that is not racist. And what do I hear? Crickets. Crickets. Or as my younger brother Ivan will say, and a great silence was heard. And a great silence was heard. And in their uncomfortable silence, I then begin to call the roll, and I then begin to school them, but I school them, as did Dr. Carter G. Woodson, with facts and not misinformation. Number one, the NBA boasts of 70% of its players being African American. 70% of its players being African American. And that is the highest percentage of Black players in any professional sports league in North America. 70%. So the question becomes, how and when and where did that, what I call soul train, begin in the NBA? Now, it didn't begin in New York City. It did not begin in Chicago. It didn't even begin in such chocolate cities as Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, because they didn't get NBA franchises until the late 60s or the early 70s. Now, in my book, which is entitled Where Jump Shots Meet Jesus, and that is my latest leadership book, in chapter 5, I deal with something that I call the soul train from Boston, Massachusetts. And what I talk about in there, and I lay out the facts, and admittedly, those who hear it may not like it, but they have to acknowledge that it is the truth. Now, this book of mine, Where Jump Shots Meet Jesus, intersects winning NBA championship dynasties with best practices from the Bible. Let me say that again. Where Jump Shots Meet Jesus, my latest book, what it does intentionally, historically, and factually, it intersects, it overlaps winning NBA championship dynasties with best practices from the Bible. Now, the Bible uses a number of different numbers to describe and symbolize different things. If you were watching my live stream last night, you heard me talk about the number 40. And the number 40 represented in the Bible periods of preparation and periods of testing. For example, God sent Moses into the wilderness for 40 years to unlearn Egyptian culture and to learn God's plan for saving the Egyptians. God then had Moses lead those children of Israel out of 400 years and 20 generations of Egyptian enslavement into the wilderness for 40 years so they can unlearn that slavery mentality, that slavery way of life, to be able to be ready to go into the promised land. But before they went into the promised land, Moses then directed 12 spies, one from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, to go over into the land of Canaan as spies and to spend how many? You guessed it, 40 days in the wilderness to investigate that land and prepare it and the people for the children of Israel coming over. The number 40 is also used again and again in the Bible. We know about when God wanted to cleanse the earth of sin and start it again fresh. He used Noah in the ark and the great flood of 40 days. We know that, for example, in the book of Jonah, when God sent Jonah to clean up the city of Nineveh, it took God and Jonah 40 days to clean up the city of Nineveh, as well as to clean up Jonah himself. When Jesus, for example, was ready to begin his earthly ministry, the Holy Spirit, it says in Luke, I think it's Matthew 4, led Jesus into the wilderness for a period of 40 days. What I love is that one of my favorite authors, leadership expert Dr. John C. Maxwell, says that for all moral leaders, a wilderness experience is necessary. He goes further to say in his John Maxwell Leadership Bible, he goes further to say that in the wilderness is where three things happen, where your motives get purified, your backbone gets solidified, and your calling gets clarified. Let me say that again. John Maxwell says that in the wilderness, and Jesus was out there for 40 days, in the wilderness, all moral leaders need a wilderness experience, because in that experience is where your calling is clarified, your backbone is solidified, and your motives get purified. So Jesus was sentenced to the wilderness for 40 days. And then after Jesus was crucified, and then after he was resurrected, and before he went to heaven, he then spent 40 days putting his disciples into a boot camp experience for 40 days to prepare them for his departure, for the introduction of the Holy Spirit, and to begin the establishment of Christianity. And it worked. It worked because those disciples, those 12 disciples in that 40-day experience, that period of testing and preparation, what that was able to help them do was to establish Christianity, which now, today, has some 2.56 billion followers. And Christianity is now the largest religion in the world. Why? Because of the 40-day experience that Jesus put on the disciples to deputize them to save and change the world. So we see the number 40 there. But I also like the number 3 in the Bible, because the number 3, much like the number 7, symbolizes wholeness, completion, and perfection. And so when I'm talking to the brothers in the barbershop, I just give them 3 facts to talk about my hometown, Boston, and the Boston Soul Train. For example, I asked the question earlier. I said 70% of the NBA players are African American. When and how did that process begin? How did that Soul Train begin? It began on April 25th, 1950. It was on that date that the Boston Celtics drafted Chuck Cooper as the NBA's first Black drafted player. That legacy of Chuck Cooper continues even now, because as of the 21-22 NBA season, the winner of the Pacific Division in the playoffs receives what is now called the Chuck Cooper Trophy, part of that Soul Train. Now, when you and I watch sports, it is not uncommon at all to see a sports team starting 5 Black players in basketball or starting a lineup of all Black players. That was not always the case, as you well know. However, on the day after Christmas in 1964, December 26, 1964, Celtics coach Red Auerbach had to replace injured player starter Tommy Heinsohn. He replaced him with Willie Knowles. And so when Willie Knowles joined the starting lineup of Tom Satch Sanders, Sam and Casey Jones, and Bill Russell, they became the first all-Black starting team in American sports, American professional sports. And the third fact that I gave him, first Chuck Cooper, then Willie Knowles and the all-Black starting team. And the third one was on April 16th, 1966, after the Boston Celtics had won their 8th consecutive championship. The Boston Celtics then named Bill Russell as its new coach, actually its player coach. This made Bill Russell the first Black manager in all of American professional sports. So those are the facts. Those are the facts. There's, you can argue, you can get emotional about this, that, and the other, but those are the facts, hardcore facts. Shall I continue? Well, once again, Carter Woodson in 1926 established Negro History Week, the forerunner of Black History Week, to do 2 things: to dispel and to discredit misinformation about, and then to apply appropriate credit to the contributions of American Negroes, African Americans here in America. As you could probably tell, and in celebration of his contribution, I say to you, let's now begin to move toward a fact-based relationship, not just leaning wholly on emotions or what feels good, but let's deal with facts as we move on from here in our lives. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm a big basketball fan. I'm a big basketball fan. I'm a bigger NBA basketball fan, but I am the biggest fan when it comes to the Bible. When it comes to the Bible. Now, let me be frank with you. I was raised on the Bible in a faith-based home. My parents sent me in the early years to a faith-based school. And then every weekend, every Saturday, Sabbath, we attended a faith-based church. I mean, that was my culture. But when I became an adult, there was a need for me to embrace the Bible and embrace God, embrace Jesus as my personal Savior. And what really made the difference in my life, what really turned me on and made me the biggest fan of the Bible, it will come as a surprise to you, was Oprah Winfrey. Blame it on Oprah Winfrey. Let me tell you what happened. It was 1989, and I was at the time living in Chicago, but I'd come home for Christmas to visit my parents and visit them for the holidays. And as was my custom, when I was home, I went to, you guessed it, the barbershop, that neighborhood barbershop, that same barbershop that I patronize now, same barbershop. And as I was sitting around there waiting to get my hair cut, yes, I had much more hair than I had now. I had hair then, and it was black. Okay. As I was sitting in the barbershop, I began leafing through magazines that were there, which was customary in the barbershop. And I ran across an Esquire magazine. And in that Esquire magazine, they were, as were most media outlets at that time, it was December 1989. And beyond just making predictions about the upcoming year, they were making predictions and projections about the upcoming decade. The upcoming decade was the 1990s. And so what Esquire magazine did, they asked several celebrities what were their predictions. And one of the questions was, what is the book that you recommend for readers for the future in the 1990s? Well, they asked Eric Siegel, and he naturally recommended his book that he wrote that turned into a big movie, a blockbuster movie, Love Story. starring, I think, Ryan O'Neal and Ellen McGraw, I believe it was. Yeah. They asked Spike Lee, who was a rising star in the world of entertainment. And naturally, he said the book to read was the autobiography of Malcolm X, because 2 years later, in 1992, he put on the silver screen the movie Malcolm X, starring Denzel Washington. But they also asked a rising star in television media, then syndicated, I believe she was syndicated out of Chicago. They asked Miss Oprah Winfrey, what is the book that you recommend that people read in the upcoming decade? And what she said blew me away. She said, and you see it on the screen here, she said the Bible. And her answer was, every answer to every question that man could ever pose has already been answered. Every answer rather, to every question that man could ever pose has already been answered. That blew me away. I wasn't ready for that. And I was never a fan of, of daytime shows. I was at work during that time. But immediately from that quote, I became then and am now an Oprah Winfrey fan. No, I don't watch daytime TV a lot, if at all. But what she said penetrated and hit me. And I never forgot that. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I'm a fan of basketball, fan of NBA basketball, fan of the Bible. And so I took on what I call the Oprah Winfrey Challenge. I challenged Oprah Winfrey to apply the Bible in different situations. And in this case, I wanted to see if what Oprah said about the Bible was true in the realm of professional basketball. And the question that I posed was, can the Bible predict, or can the Bible set the stage for what makes champions? What makes, in my case, not just a person being a winner in the NBA, but makes them part of a championship team, but more than that, what makes you part of a winning NBA championship dynasty? Now, I go back to my biblical numbers. I'm going to tell you what happened. Every time I think about the story, I get amused. I get tickled. I started back in 2022, jotting down some notes, thinking about this book, and how do pro basketball and the Bible come together? I had a couple of books out, about 3 other books out earlier, and there was an upcoming fair, a social event at my church. And I wanted to sell my previous books that I had, but I wanted to move up a notch from just taking sales by checks and cash or Cash App. I wanted to move up into a Square. The Square is that little small device that you attach to your phone to be able to take transactions by credit, debit, or debit cards. And so I went to my bank, my local branch of my Synovus Bank. And I went to my personal banker there, Miss Lateria Moses Waters. And I said, I need to get a Square. And she said, well, I don't have that authority, Tim. Let me call corporate office. And so while I'm sitting there in her office, she puts on speakerphone. She calls corporate office and speaks to a gentleman who was working there at the time named Robert Livingston. And she put him on the phone talking to me about, and I gave him my pitch about wanting to get a Square to do business in terms of my book sales. And he asked me a series of questions. And then, well, he let me down gently. He let me know the fact that I was not making enough money from my book sales to justify the cost of a Synovus Square, its charges and services. So I said to myself, well, I'm really not thinking about my focus is not on these other 3 books that I've written. And they've all been bestsellers. God has blessed it. My real focus is on the new book that I'm currently working on. We got some scribbled notes on it, on the overlapping between basketball and the Bible. And all of a sudden, his conversation just pivoted. He swiveled on me and he said, you do know, Tim, that that basketball was invented at a YMCA gymnasium. Whoa! I was blown away. I mean, I had been to the Basketball Hall of Fame twice for visits up in Springfield, Massachusetts. I knew the history of basketball, but that simple, powerful fact had slipped my mind. And I said to Mr. Livingston and to Lateria Moses on the phone, I said, wow. I said, these last 7 seconds of conversation have more than outweighed these previous 3 minutes of your conversation turning me down gently. I said, the very fact that basketball was invented in a faith-based facility such as a YMCA, a Young Men's Christian Association, that's all the alley-oop that I need. I mean, I was totally blown away by me making what I thought was a random comment and him giving back that answer. I mean, the Bible talks about in the book of Hebrews, be careful when we entertain strangers because some have entertained angels unaware. Shortly after talking with him and meeting with him, I later found out that he left the company. So in biblical terms, he was an angel for me who was there just in time. I was blown away, but I was not totally convinced, not totally convinced. So I began to think one morning in prayer. I said, okay, God, this is nice. I can work with this. I said, but I need some more. I need some more juice. I said, are there any parallels between the founder of basketball and the founder of Christianity? And I said, well, just start writing. And I just began to start writing. I took a piece of paper, drew a line down the middle, and put Jesus on one side and James on the other side. And it began to hit me. That's how the Holy Spirit works. I said, this is James Naismith, or James of Naismith family. And on the other side is Jesus of Nazareth. I said, so that's cute. You know, I was an English major in college, so I'm a wordsmith. So I said, well, keep rolling. And I said, and see now, I said, James Naismith, from knowing a little bit about his history, he came to this country from Canada. He came as a foreigner to the United States. I said, Jesus came to this earth by comparison, Jesus came to this earth from heaven. He was the first and only fully God and only fully God, fully divine, and fully human being to come to this earth. So he was certainly by definition a foreigner. I said, okay. I said, keep going. I said, now James Naismith was hired at the Springfield YMCA as both its chaplain and as its PE or physical education instructor. I said, I said, Jesus came to this earth to provide pastoral ministry. That certainly qualifies as chaplaincy. And from my reading of the Bible, everywhere Jesus went with his disciples, they were walking on foot. So can you imagine what their Fitbit looked like at the end of the day? Walking. I said, that certainly is physical fitness. And then as I began to read on more and reflect on Naismith's background, up in New England, where I'm from, and where Springfield, Massachusetts is, about 90 miles from Boston, they were getting ready for an anticipation of those
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Sometimes technology gets in the way. Anyway, um, I was, no, the YMCA was getting ready for those bitter, harsh, cold winters. And so the director of the YMCA, Mr. Luther Gulick, said to Naismith, James Naismith, you need to invent an activity to be able to harness the energy and keep occupied these young rowdies, he called them, while they're inside the building. And in the process of thinking about that, he came up with what we now know as basketball. So what's the comparison to Jesus? The Bible tells me that Jesus prayed all night long to the Father to give him the young men that he needed to be the arms and legs and eyes and ears to spread this gospel, to get this word out there. And who did he pick after praying all night long? He picked a couple of Jewish nationalists. He picked a couple of sons of blood and thunder who were ready to burn down the city because they rejected Jesus. He picks a white-collar criminal in Matthew who was a tax cheat. He picked a couple of other rowdies, and to use the term that James Naismith used, and he also pulled up and picked a betrayer. So those were not Rhodes Scholars. They were not honor roll people. They were a bunch of rowdies. But just like those young men and later young women who were taught the game of basketball became the genesis of what is now one of the world's most popular international sports. Jesus took those 12 rowdies and turned the world upside down and created Christianity, again, with his 2.56 billion followers as of my latest set of statistics, which has now made them the largest religion in the world. And I said, as I began to look at this manuscript, I said, Tim, you got something here. But then I kept digging, and I said, let me see what else I can come up with. I said, as I began to write what is now this book, as I began to look at it, I said, well, what makes an NBA champion? I said, at the time, out of the 76 years of NBA history at the time of the writing, I said 7 teams had won 1 championship and 6 teams had won 2 championships. But because I was so fixated on the number 3 from the Bible, which symbolized completion, perfection, and wholeness, I then created a model that said a dynasty. Well, let me back up. We often hear at a championship game, and we'll probably hear it next week when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs and the Super Bowl, should they be fortunate enough to win a next championship. You'll hear the talk about dynasty. You hear about a team that wins 2 dynasty. But my model with a biblical foundation is that a dynasty, a winning NBA championship dynasty, is any team, hear me now, any team that has won three NBA championships in the least amount of time. A dynasty, by the model that I have developed out of the Bible, a dynasty in the NBA is any team that has won 3 championships in the least amount of time. What do I mean? A team that's won 3 championships, either 3 in a row or 3 in a 4-year span of time. And with that in mind, the only teams that qualify for that, there are 5 franchises in NBA history. Number 1, and I'll get that in a second. I'll say it now. Those 5 teams have all been led by servant leaders. I'll tell you what that means in a second. So those 5 teams, those 5 franchises, those 5 dynasties in the NBA are the 1950s and 60s Boston Celtics, led by Bill Russell, the 1980s Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson, the 1990s Chicago Bulls, led by not Michael Jordan, but by Scottie Pippen, the servant leader, the 2000 Kobe Bryant-led Los Angeles Lakers, and the 2010s and 2020s led Golden State Warriors, led by Steph Curry. Now, why do I pick those names following a servant leadership model? Let's go back to the model. Let's go back to the facts about competitive sports. The purpose of competitive sports is to win. And you win by scoring the most amount of points. The most amount of points. Now, there are 2 ways that I know of, having been a basketball player, that you score points. Either by what you put in the basket, but the other thing is what you prevent from going in the opponent's basket. So, with each of those persons that I named, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Scottie Pippen, Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry, I have said that they led their teams as servant leaders because in each of those instances, they were top scorers, high school, Olympics, college. But when they got to the pros, their coaches said, look, I know you can score. I know you can score. But what I need you to do is get the ball to your teammates. If you get the ball to your teammates, more of them can score, more of us can win, we will win more championships, and they and you will be inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. So I'll take as an example, not surprising, Bill Russell, top scorer at McClymonds High School there in the Bay Area of San Francisco, Oakland, I think it was. Top scorer in college at University of San Francisco. Top scorer in the 1956 Olympics. Came to the Celtics, and Coach Red Auerbach said, hey, man, I know you're a scorer, but you also have defensive prowess. Nobody at this stage is playing defense like you. And so it's, like I said, it's one thing to score baskets, but baskets typically get scored by teams typically win games by not just how many points you score, but how many points you can keep other teams from scoring. That's called defense. And defense is made by blocking shots, rebounding, steals, and assists. And so nobody was better at defense, at blocking shots and rebounding and winning like Bill Russell with the Boston Celtics. And I go into much more detail about this, of how each of these guys was a servant leader on his team. Yeah, they were stars, but they were stars because they made everybody else look good. And so, yeah, there were some great teams and there have been some great players, but by the model that I use, there are only 5 dynasties. Yes, I had a big argument with one of my very, very good friends named Darrell Williams. And he said, Tim, your definition is flawed. What about the San Antonio Spurs? Look at all the championships they won. I said, yes. I said, but they did not win 3 in a row or 3 in a 4-year span of time. They won a lot of championships, a lot of titles with Tim Duncan and David Robinson, and Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, but they did not follow the model of the 3 that make up the dynasty. And so that's what goes on in the book. Now, I could bore you with basketball statistics, but let me just answer the one question that most folk want. Who is the GOAT? Who is the GOAT? And for those of you who are not familiar with sports language, GOAT is the acronym for GOAT, greatest of all times. Well, once again, Carter G. Woodson, Black History Month, Negro History Week, Black History Month. His job was to dispel misinformation and to apply appropriate credit. He dealt with the facts. Let me deal with the facts. I don't expect to win arguments in the barbershop. I don't expect to win arguments in the locker room. I don't expect to win arguments on a basketball court or in the stands. But these are the facts. If the object of, I had to go to my book here anyway. If the object of competitive sports is winning, if the object is winning, excuse me, then the winningest basketball player in the NBA history was Bill Russell. Bill Russell, as a player and as a coach, won 11 championships in 13 years. He was heralded as the greatest winner in all of 20th century American team sports. No question about it. Now, forgive me. I was an English major. I'm a writer. And my contention is the fact that most people, when they talk about the GOAT, as an English major and as a writer, I believe that they're talking about the GOAT, but I believe they're misspelling the word GOAT, as opposed to spelling G-O-A-T in terms of greatest of all times. I believe that they're spelling it G-O-T-E, the greatest of that era, G-O-T-E. And with that in mind, one could easily say, for example, that the GOAT, the greatest of that era, could have easily have been in the 50s. It could have been George Mikan, and it could have been Bob Cousy. In the 60s, it could have easily been Oscar Robertson, who invented the triple-double that is now very, very popular. I mean, nobody was doing that back then but Oscar Robertson. Nobody. He was considered to be the perfect basketball player. In the 70s, it could arguably have been Julius Erving. Easily could have been Julius Erving, the greatest of that era. In the 80s, it could easily have been Magic or Larry Bird, or it could have been Michael Jordan. And I talk more about Michael Jordan in the book, or maybe in another episode. I'll just give you a quick thumbnail. For all of his acrobatics and all of his skills and all of his everything that Michael Jordan was. Michael Jordan was great, no two ways about it, but he didn't win anything. They couldn't even win a playoff series when he was with Chicago Bulls until 1987, when Scottie Pippen got there, an unknown player from an unknown school. That's why in the 2009 Hall of Fame induction speech, as well as in the series, the 2020 documentary series on ESPN, about The Last Dance, Michael Jordan said, people talk about me, but you can't talk about me in championships without talking about Scottie Pippen. And that's true. But I'm getting off subject there. So I believe when people say GOAT, I don't take anything away from LeBron James. I'm a LeBron James fan, by and large. I was a Michael Jordan fan, by and large. But I generally, as I think about my writing here and my talking with you about emerging leaders, Scottie Pippen and Kobe Bryant and Steph Curry, even though Steph Curry was a big scorer, but I could talk about that another time. Or you can read what I have to say about it in the book, because Steph Curry is in line to have the magnitude of a Muhammad Ali. But you'd have to read that in the book, my explanation about that. So the GOAT, in terms of a player on the court and on the sidelines as a coach, Bill Russell. But let me break it down even further than that. Bill Russell, to me, was the greatest player coach, having won 11 championships in 13 years, 2 of which as a player coach. That's Bill Russell as the player coach. Now, the greatest, watch the language now. The greatest player coach, Bill Russell. The greatest coach player, It's Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson won 11 championships as a coach, 6 with the Chicago Bulls, 5 with the Los Angeles Lakers, and then 2 in his earliest playing days with the New York Knicks in 1970 and 73. But the GOAT of NBA history, it's not Bill Russell, is not Phil Jackson. The GOAT in terms of winning is Red Auerbach, because Red Auerbach won 16 championships as coach, as president, and as general manager of the Boston Celtics. So I guess, yeah, you could tell I'm a Boston Celtic fan from Everett, Massachusetts. Yes, I grew up parking cars in Harvard Yard. Yes, and I'm wicked smart. And back off all my friends from New York who always want to talk about Boston. You know, you can't hold a candle to those Boston Celtics. And you're in New York. Yeah, I know the Yankees won 27 World Series championships, but really, I'm not an ancient history fan, okay? Well, look, whoa, the game is well started. And if I look at the score, whoa, my Celtics need me right now. So let me go. Bye, y'all. Hey, thanks for watching the show. Thanks for watching us on this journey. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you grew from this experience. I certainly grew from this experience. And let me tell you, I kind of like not waiting a whole week to share with you what God has put on my heart. So who knows? Maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, I'll have another episode. And who knows? Maybe you and I are getting ready to start a tradition of multiple days in the week where I will do a live stream. And maybe when I grow up all the way, I'll be doing a live stream every weekday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, provided, of course, that God gives me a word, that I'm able to glean something from current events and newsmakers and harmonize it with what thus saith the Lord says. Again, thank you for joining. The Tim Allston Show will forever continue to guide you and become that weekly or maybe even that daily guide for inspiration and information and action. Now, if this message resonates with you, please do us a favor. Don't just listen to the show. Like it, subscribe it, and share it with your friends. And if you appreciated the information I shared with you, and if you want more information, please contact me and email me at info@timallston.com. Now, you heard me mention about my book, Where Jump Shots Meet Jesus. May I make you a special offer that if you choose to go onto my website at timallston.com and choose to purchase the book, you can get it there. And I will be happy to autograph it for you if you go to my website at timallston.com. And here's my special offer to you. If you get the book, then you will also get from me an audio version of the book too. So it's like 2 for 1. But if you put in a bulk order of 5 or 10 or more books in a bulk order, what I will do is this offer. I will make an offer to you that if you designate to me your favorite nonprofit charitable organization, the monies that you pay for this book, I will donate back to the organization of your choice, the nonprofit charitable organization, 50% of the purchase price. Fair enough? My parents worked in nonprofit organizations all their life. I've worked in nonprofit organizations much of my life. I owe virtually everything in my life to nonprofit organizations, most of which have been hit hard by the recent COVID and pandemic in the early part of this decade. I want to give back and help to create an additional stream of income. Fair enough? So if you buy a bulk order of 5 or 10 or more, and you're able to designate who you want to receive those funds in your name, we will make a donation. Once you pay for the books, we get them to a donation. 50% of what you pay will donate to your favorite charitable nonprofit organization. Fair enough? Hey, Thank you. And again, my message to you is that if this message is becoming to you, then you should be coming to us. This is the Tim Allston Show. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for spending time with us. God bless. And hopefully, possibly, may see you later on this week. Bye-bye.